Welcome everyone here on this Monday morning to Moral Technologies. We're going to hear now from Nicanor for the first session of our meeting here. And we have people from around the world joining us every day with the videos, so welcome wherever you are. And I'm standing next to Nicanor like this so that you can get the microphone.
There's
like
a technological breakdown. Okay.
So we're so delighted to have Nicanor here. This theme, Moral Technologies, as we've heard this morning just in our introductions with each other, it's just so the future. It's such a theme of the future. And it's not a theme that we're already discussing very openly and consciously. And it's so exciting to be here with everyone and to have you here, Nicanor, to actually start talking about this theme.
It's great to be here. Yeah.
So Nicanor, I met Nicanor at the International Youth Initiative program in Sweden, and he was a contributor there, and he started talking about singularity and the development of nanotechnologies. And it was quite terrifying 9 years ago, but now, you know, just on our Facebook page, it's just streaming with articles and videos and, you know, so much information about these themes. So already very quickly in the last 9 years, here we are to have this conversation. Yeah. And Nicanor has been working in the Philippines through mass mobilization of civil society, working with education, with, you know, preventing nuclear energy coming in very dramatic and disastrous situation ways, and also with GMOs, working to sort of manage the GMO intake into the Philippines. He even ran for president about 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah, I had that illusion. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. So he ran for president with the ideas based around threefolding ideas, and although he didn't win and didn't come close to winning, there was something like 200,000 people voted for him and the ideas that he was bringing. So that's very exciting. So Nicanor, thank you.
Yeah, thanks Rose
Welcome
for coming here.
for your first lecture.
So this is still intact? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd just really like to say I'm really happy to be here. And I will now consider this a kind of prototype to a larger global conference that we're planning to organize around this topic. And towards the end, I'll say why this is a kind of prototype. But already it's much larger than the people here in this room, because without my knowledge, it's supposed to be in the internet, the way things are usually done today. So that's okay. This is a public conversation. And it will also give a chance for those in the artificial intelligence community, which is a specific focus, to see what would happen if you had a real conversation going on. And this is very important. I think this conversation is very important because technology development is so rapid that it's blurring a lot of boundaries, a lot of paradigms, a lot of mindsets, and it's moving so fast with like almost very fast speed, that we all have to engage in this topic for whatever perspective, for whatever reason. I think the image that I'd like to put here is the 2004, that typhoon that came from Indonesia that killed, the earthquake or the tidal wave, the tsunami that killed eventually 300,000 people in many countries, including a lot of Swedish people who were vacationing in in Indonesia. Tidal wave, a tsunami that reached all the way to India. Because this is the nature of exponential developments. I mean, it's a way, there's more sophisticated technical ways of doing this kind of graph, right? Exponential curve, acceleration of acceleration. But basically, for common people, the picture is you're happy here, you're in a beach, you're swimming, and it's sunny, and all of a sudden you see a tidal wave, tsunami, that's like 4 stories high, and then you're dead. Okay, I don't want to paint a negative picture of technology. I have what you might say, a comfortable relationship with technology, but sometimes it just gets out of line. So I grow up in a family that is scientifically oriented. I have a brother who's a PhD in mathematics, one in computer science. He's now actually still working there, setting up the software for the US postal system that can manage billions of packages. So we talk a lot about this topic. So I'm a little familiar, but not a geek, as some of you here are, who actually do the programming. But I understand it a little bit. And so technology has been a constant part of my life. I actually introduced the first, believe it or not, the first laptop in the Philippines. It was a huge curiosity way back when it was just, there was no Apple, there was no, and people were actually looking at it. And the irony is, I used that to actually permanently stop nuclear power in the Philippines, together at the Philippine Senate in the office of the president. So it doesn't say, okay, this is the complicated relationship with technology, because it can bring tremendous good. But then when the parameters of its existence in a societal structure and in ecological context is not well defined, then it creates tremendous problems. I'll just give a few examples so, as a kind of introduction to the theme. Then I'll go right into the AI theme. The Philippines has 2 earthquakes a day, or something like that. It has its own tectonic plate, so it's very moving and shaking with lots of earthquakes. And during the time of the dictatorship of Marcos in the Philippines, when I was still young, like a lot of people here, he planned 12 nuclear power plants all over the Philippines, but most of them were in earthquake faults, near active volcanoes and the whole thing. So I almost took a course, my bachelor's degree would have been in nuclear physics, because I'm comfortable with physics, because I saw the tremendous power and possibilities of splitting the atom for useful purposes, right? But so it was a choice between nuclear physics and biodynamic agriculture, not biodynamic, but agriculture. Although I did become a biodynamic farmer eventually. So agriculture for me was more practical, because the Philippines was 80% poor, and agriculture was the major profession. So I chose that path, but then destiny would be such that I had to go back and deal with nuclear power, but now on the other end, as opposing it. Okay, because what had happened was that tremendous bribery to the dictator, $40 million, and all the other stuff, inverted design, sloppy construction, sloppy siting in an earthquake fault, and at the base of a dormant volcano which exploded. The neighbor, the same system exploded 60 kilometers away, and that's what's Mount Pinatubo, the second largest volcanic eruption in the 20th century. But it's the same system where this nuclear reactor, so we were just saying, what if this nuclear reactor was operational and this event happened? What would have happened? So anyway, I'm not against technology per se, and that's why I got attracted to the word moral, but of course it means so many different things. In other words, what is the use of technology for benefits of humanity? So this is important because I also today, after some health issues, have now to live with certain kinds of technology every day. And I will not tell you that in detail. So I have this relationship to technology, but at the same time, I also have a relationship with saying, wow, this thing is overstepped. What is the science behind it, right? So that was the nuclear question. And then I ended up with a nuclear question, lobbying in Washington, D.C., similar work. Lobbying, because at that time, the Philippine nuclear power plant was the first major, largest export loan from the Export-Import Bank of the United States. And they were wanting to find out, the safety issue. So I got stuck there because I couldn't go back because of dictatorship. My friends were being killed. So I was actually being tailed by an FBI agent. And interestingly enough, he was sneaking in our meetings, but he actually also got the permits for protests and demonstrations until he got exposed. And then we never saw him again. So anyway, with that issue, then I encountered the issue of genetic engineering, and it has a lot to do also with this, because tonight, as we shall hear, there is a kind of Asilomar. There was a kind of Asilomar conference on artificial intelligence in 2009, 2008. I'll speak about that more tonight, but the issue was that here's a newborn technology. No one exactly knew where it was going. And they were thinking of certain kinds of experiments that could have tremendous impacts. So I actually joined I became an executive director of a group called the Foundation on Economic Trends. Some of you may be familiar with the work of Jeremy Rifkin. That started the whole conversation of genetic engineering, as it was called, but now more popularly known as biotechnology. So I've been dealing, in a sense, a lot with technological issues, from nuclear power, biotechnology, and now artificial intelligence. My background is in science, but not necessarily artificial intelligence. So I'm scientifically literate in that sense. And part of this thing, part of dealing with the AI issue is actually allowing a certain kind of context in the massive transformation of science that's going on today, not just in AI, but other disciplines. There's a lot of things going on, and it will be interesting to see how that looks like in connection with artificial intelligence and many other issues. So I just wanted to give that background because there might come a time in the 4 days that I might be kind of very strong in certain perspectives about the potential impact of artificial intelligence. But it's very clear that artificial intelligence is actually here. AI is actually here. It's running a lot of the modern systems that we have. You will have no banking system without artificial intelligence. There's no trading in the stock market without artificial intelligence, which is behind trillions of dollars floating around the planet, determining the fate of nations. Yeah? So technology is pervasive. Of course, we got the whole internet stuff and the pros and cons for that situation. So it's here. It's around us. And major historical developments in the last 70 years, maybe starting with the dropping of the bomb in Hiroshima. Sorry for that, hero. Killing 500,000 or more people. And ever since that time, technology has accompanied humanity. So for those who have a more spiritual perspective, this will encourage you to take a look at what is it that you're running away from, if you're running away. But it's better to take a look at it head on and see the implicit thought structures that are behind it. Technology does not function without a thought structure. Even in programming, you have an algorithm, right, that determines how AI functions, but that's created by human beings. There's a certain type of thought structure. There are certain kinds of thinking processes that have been codified there. That's why it can function the way it is. So it's important. And by the way, the other thing with technology is that it may have been designed for something, but then people can use it for another thing, right? The internet was designed initially by the US military. And then it was, they were trying to sell it to, I think, IBM or something. So what are we going to do with that? So it's good they didn't realize it, and now it became public. So it's now being used for a different purpose. And then you now have the dark net, right? The underground internet, which is much larger than the Google internet, where they do drugs, prostitutions, arms, and all kinds of stuff, away from the prying eyes of the intelligence agencies of the world. So what I'm saying is that technology is actually created for a specific purpose, and then some other purpose which has the resources and that can overtake it, and then it goes into another direction, and you see what I'm saying, and so on. And all of a sudden, you don't know what it's morphing into. Okay. So that is I just want to convey that we all have to deal with technology. There are many fantastic benefits with technology. But on the other hand, there are certain things that are developing without conversation. We need to have a global conversation. So in a certain sense, I'm happy that this is in the internet, because this might spark conversation in wherever it will be, because we really need to have these kinds of conversation. And by the way, that also leads me to the point of appreciating the tremendous diversity in this room. That's why I made a joke earlier. I want to go back to the Philippines and say goodbye. There's a lot of diversity in this room, many different perspectives. But in a sense, it's a microcosm of the planet, right? Not complete, but diverse enough for different perspectives to come up. What we need actually is a kind of conversation where we just listen to different perspectives so that we get to understand. We will not understand the logic. There is an inner logic in technology. We will not understand that if we don't know the logic of the creators of that technology. We need to understand that. On the other hand, the creators of the technology will not understand the logic of the impact of the technology from those who will be at the receiving end. They need to figure the thing out. See what I'm saying? So you need the diversity in here. And so I just want to acknowledge that's here. And I'm really glad we have such a diverse audience here, because it will shed more light from many different perspectives about technology. So that was a kind of introduction. So I'm sure, and many of the young people here especially, or maybe also some of the older generation, have been watching the epochal battle, so to speak, between an AI created by Google, known as AlphaGo, and a world champion on Go. This took place only last month, exactly around this time. This is from March 9 to 15. 5 games. And 5 games, right? The winner would win $1 million. And so that was the stake, right? But the AI from Google, which is basically a subsidiary of Google called DeepMind, was the creator of this artificial intelligence called AlphaGo. And it did something which even shook me. Because it started to, I found it really interesting what it was able to do. And it's in a sense also reconceptualizing my own notion of intuition. On a certain level. But anyway, I'm jumping ahead, but what happened was that AlphaGo defeated the world champion 4-1. Now, people don't really appreciate, who are not into following these developments, don't really appreciate what went on there. But I was so involved with it, despite all my activities, I would then go to the internet and see what happened. Actually, I actually in fact wrote, I'm rarely in Facebook. I am in Facebook, but I'm rarely there because of all the work that I'm doing. But I wrote myself a letter, an email message to Lee Sedol, the world champion, when he defeated AlphaGo. And I was telling him, hey, I mean, congratulations, blah, blah, blah. A lot of humanity is looking at this because, in a sense, he represented humanity, the natural capabilities of humanity, versus a machine that had 100 scientists behind it, AI experts, plus 1,200 CPUs, plus about 60 GPUs, graphic, So this machine was... And on top of that, this machine had carried DeepMind's two approaches to producing AI, so neural nets and deep learning. So they're combining these kinds of approaches. Neural net is a kind of reverse engineering of the human brain, how the neurons function as a net. So they were trying to figure out that kind of thing. And at the same time, the deep learning is they develop an algorithm for the machine to learn by itself through experience. So it played millions of games, plus it got in its database probably all the existing games of Go. And it was given certain instructions on how to operate because the usual approach of number crunching or crunching scenarios was no longer applicable. The old AI, I'm saying it's old AI, the one that defeated Garry Kasparov, the world champion in chess in 1977, that was a differently constructed AI from this one, which is much more sophisticated. So in chess, you have a number of, you make a move, then you can work out the possible ramifications of that move, right? The person moves, then you can. Meanwhile, the computer is taking a look at this with billions of calculations at that time, but now it's reaching over 100 trillion calculations a second, which this thing did, right? So, yeah, I can see the... But anyway, one cannot even fathom what 100 trillion calculations per second really works, right? But in the game of Jeopardy, which was an earlier AI achievement, it defeated the two world champions of Jeopardy. What the computer did was to read the entire Wikipedia, encyclopedia in 3 seconds. And gave an answer. And it has a different kind of thinking than human thinking. At least for that program, it would determine the probability that Obama was the president of the Philippines just by looking at the data. First, it went maybe 50%. That's the way it thinks, statistically, probability, and so on, until finally, yes, this is the answer. But it can do that because it has massive storage of data. And by the way, you can immediately see the applications of AlphaGo in the real world because of big data mining. That's what they call it in the corporate world, I think. I've been in Silicon Valley where these conferences on data mining were being spoken about, and I said, holy smokes. I mean, we just really graduated beyond the cell phone, right? So, data mining. So anyway, AlphaGo was kind of different. Because, first of all, it could no longer do the usual, power crunching, right? So because Go has more possible moves than the number of atoms in the entire universe. So it was no longer possible, even if you had a supercomputer, you could not calculate all those probabilities. So it gave a different logic to AlphaGo. And that different logic was, what's the best move given this situation? And what is the probability of success? Okay, so that's how it was thinking. Now, an interesting thing happened there, which was really very interesting. And it both happened in the AI side and in the human side. Okay, just a quick background. Lee Sedol from South Korea is the world champion of Go, has won 18 world championships, and considered the #2 greatest Go player in history. I mean, he's on top there, so. Okay, so that's why Google, the DeepMind people were really very excited to see, because their computer had just defeated the European champion, but it was not really top seeded. So they wanted to test the system with the world's best player at this time. So something happened, which is, I think, very interesting, which in a sense brings the significance of this conversation into a totally different level. Okay, because there were times in the games, I follow the comments of the Go experts and the AI experts. They were making comments in real time in the site that they provided for this game. So I was just taking a look at what they were saying, how they were analyzing it. And in both instances, both from the human side and the AI side, there were certain moves that were considered ridiculous or dumb or crazy, but then several moves later, it was brilliant. Okay? So that's how the human defeated the machine. It gave a low probability success move, rattled the machine a little bit, did not expect that, and then it won. It actually lost already earlier, but it just wanted to stay on it. That was more than 5 hours. Yeah. So the question for me then was, so what really is human intuition? Okay? Because this machine started displaying, moves that were not expected by the programmers, by the experts in Go, and of course, and then I now say, wow, this is brilliant. How did that come about? Both sides, right? First one. Second one was, how is it? And this is the other side that's rarely asked, or maybe I'm not just up to date with the literature. It's rarely asked is, how did this guy defeat an AI which behind it stood 100 scientists, top in their field, very sophisticated people, and on top of that, was calculating at trillions of calculations per second. So what is it in the human mind that made that possible? So these are now kind of new questions. For me, I have some tentative answers to it that maybe I can share in the next few days here. But we are really, in this whole artificial intelligence conversation, we are now at a different level. Because the other thing here is that what AlphaGo did, artificial intelligence, was considered impossible for the next 10 years. It happened 10 years earlier than expected. And that, by the way, was the estimate of the guy who previously held the world record on AI in Go. Forgot his name. That was his estimate, and became a kind of estimate in the AI community. And all of a sudden, wow, 10 years earlier, this thing defeated human beings in a game that, okay, for some of you would know the term, the Holy Grail. Okay, so that means a lot in this community for some of you. The Holy Grail of the artificial intelligence community. That was the Holy Grail. So Google, but before this happened, there's another event which I will speak on tonight, which is very interesting, which has a lot to do with this, because now that event of AI experts around the world we're exactly grappling with the question of what to do once AI is reaching a certain level of development that may actually, in fact, go beyond the human capability of actually establishing controls. There's a huge debate, by the way. Oh, yes, you can put controls there, but if the AI is capable of doing moves that were not in the programming, how could you create a safe AI? So anyway, we will take a look at these questions more. I just wanted to bring that event because it's so recent, it's just a month. And in a sense, the world is still debating what exactly was that. You know, even the makers of AI, from DeepMind, were absolutely surprised at Lee Sedel's victory. They were totally surprised if you read the CEO's comments in the running thread. Yeah. And yeah. And now the interesting thing is that the AI learned about that and incorporated that in the learning experience and defeated Lee Sedol. So, okay. Now, tonight you'll see a certain kind of clustering of the global discussions on artificial intelligence. But since we have 4 days here together, I'd just like to give you a kind of sense how we are going to navigate this question. Just a kind of sense, just by giving a certain number of questions that we will be tackling. Okay, thank you. Yeah, perfect. So, I'm just going to raise here a series of questions because my perspective on AI and technology in general is that there is a stream of technology, really powerful, really accelerating. The stream behind AI is 54 technologies that are being developed. Some of them independent, but now being developed with now a certain kind of coherence. They were mostly independent, like, 54 technologies: materials technology, information technology, synthetic biology, all of this stuff, right? No one can actually access this thing. I mean, there are people like Ray Kurzweil, very famous guy, who's now Google's director for artificial intelligence. That's his exact position, but anyway, he's there. And basically, the owners of Google told him, well, we'll basically give you our connections, our resources, and money. Bring your vision into reality. So his vision is singularity is near. Okay, that's the name of his book. And his vision basically, if you don't have the time to read the thick book, it's about how do you develop physical immortality, how do you develop super intelligence, how do you develop super strength, and super health. So that's what they're going to work on in Google with all the resources and all the connections that is there. But Google is just one. There's so many artificial intelligence research labs around the world, but Google probably is the most well-funded, right? That's why everybody's kind of looking at what Google will do. We will take a look at those concepts, in more detail. Physical immortality, right? All those 4. And then also we'll take a closer look at the concept of downloading your consciousness into a machine, which is also part of his vision. In fact, his latest book with a journalist, Dr. Rosenblatt or something, some of you would know this more, it's about downloading his father's memories into an artificial machine. By the way, he one day sees himself being downloaded into a computer. That's why he's taking around dozens of pills a day, because he feels that this breakthrough is very near and will happen soon. He wants to be alive because then he can then be physically immortal. Okay, so Now, this is happening in this kind of stream of human evolution. Technological evolution is the cutting edge. Tonight, you'll see more what the reaction is of other AI scientists, other geeks to this, because there are other kinds of geeks, right? Like Elon Musk, Elon Musk, Stephen Hawking, right? Even Bill Gates. They have certain very interesting reaction to this, but the technology itself, the AI community is moving right ahead. And my own perspective is, what would that whole conversation and debate look like if we brought in the latest findings from other scientific fields, especially biology, especially neuroscience, especially astrophysics, evolutionary psychology. I mean, all of these things are moving ahead. Quantum physics, as a professor of physics here. Is it you? No. Oh, hi. Be great to hear your perspective on Tuesday. Yeah. So there are many scientific developments which, in a sense, are not being factored into the whole AI conversation. Because as we shall learn, there's a very specific image of the human being in artificial intelligence. There's a very specific image of the human being there. And for me, the largest question is that a clear and accurate image of the human being? Or does the human being have more potential than basically an externalization of his cognitive intelligence, right? Basically IQ. So that is one fundamental question, because as we shall see tonight, the whole question of safety of what's being called, there are many different names for it, but super intelligent AI or general artificial intelligence. I mean, there are many different names. All saying is that when this reaches a point, then if that computer develops a certain kind of self-reflection, of self-awareness, then that will be the last human invention. Because some people speak about human intelligence level AI. Okay, AI at our level. And some say that super intelligent AI, meaning say beyond the human, is still some ways ahead. But some people say, it might immediately happen a few months after. Okay, that's part of the ongoing debate, and I'll speak about how the AI community is coming to terms with this. Yeah, I don't want to duplicate topics, right? So I just want okay, that's the first question. What really is the human being? We will touch upon this in the morning sessions, and I'm sure you're going to have your own conversations in the afternoon. Because there's a very specific image of the human being in the AI. Is that the accurate one? What are the other scientific fields saying about that image of the human being? The extraordinary thing of our century, the 21st century, is that we're living in the century of science and technology. So there's no way of avoiding science and technology. Okay? A lot of things are happening, and it's fantastic. A great number of them fantastic. There are just a few areas that are now raising fundamental questions. Okay, number 2. Does consciousness solely reside in the brain? That's another scientific debate that's going on. Outside AI, but also within some AI, and the results of that debate is informing the whole AI project, right? So I see some of the AI people connecting some of the different positions in that debate. So is consciousness just basically in the brain? Is another way to put it? Or is consciousness more vast than the brain, and the brain is one aspect of that consciousness? That will have an implication on how We all deal with AI. Third question. Okay, what is life? What does it mean to be alive? And that question is really urgent because is the AI alive? Right? No one knows, right? But for example, if I explain to you now that the whole project from the 1950s until now to create life in the laboratory is totally failed. So there's something much more complicated than life, than simply DNA. DNA itself is undergoing, the DNA paradigm is undergoing a deep crisis. So how do developments in biology, especially epigenetic biology, how does that fit into the whole way of the AI conversation? In other words, I'm looking at the broadening of the conversation. Okay? So we dealt with consciousness. Okay. Now, I'll introduce here one aspect of this because of the nature of the people are here, and because several billion people around the world also have that framework, not anthroposophy, but reincarnation. It's almost like a taboo topic, supposed to be unscientific, right? But the question is, if there are very serious grounds for that, what would it mean if you transplanted your brain into an artificial intelligence system? What would it mean that if evolution moves from carbon-based to silicon-based? What would that do? What would that mean? By the way, there are a lot more complicated topics. Okay, so the other question is, what should the nature of society be when AI comes? Because it will come. And the debate is, in what form will it come? No one can stop AI. It's going to happen. So the question is, what form will it take, right? Because right now, some of my colleagues who are also dealing with this topic are refusing to see the human side, the artificial intelligence side. They're more inclined to take a look at what is the impact on the global economy and all of this. There are serious impacts also there. Okay, for example, if nanotech really figured out in a systematic way the transformation of the atomic structure. So if you have this, the periodic table of chemistry, right? You have this. Now what if you take calcium and you can convert that into this, right? To steel or iron. By the way, there are increasing number of mining companies, I don't know how it is in Australia, a major mining country, that have taken a stake in nano mining, nanotech mining. In other words, they're putting their foot also there because someday there might be a game changer there, a killer app, right, in nanotech, which now means that, for example, if you can create artificial diamonds, what will it mean for the diamonds in Africa, right? Okay. These are kind of subsidiary questions there in nanotech because they're speaking now of being able to transmute chemicals, atoms from one atom to another. Chalk can be made as hard as steel. Some of the architects in nanotech are thinking of a space ladder instead of space. Getting this ladder there, so whether that's a crazy idea or whether it will work, if you want to go to outer space, you enter this elevator of you go there, right? Because you're going to create materials which are very light and super strong. Okay, whether that's fantasy or reality, I mean, yeah, a lot of science fiction has become reality, right? So no one here among us can predict what kind of technology will emerge, in what form, where, and how, and in what way. I'm going to speak more to this because there's a whole huge debate for those AI experts concerned with safety. There's a huge debate with some of the challenges that they're facing there on that end. But you can see that there are fundamental questions here, right? And because in the end, technology, no matter how complicated, is in the end, and this is where the word moral comes in, right? In the end, is infused with specific types of intentions, which are then grounded in a specific type of vision of the world. This is going to be unavoidable if you want to say moral, right? Especially in a world where the question is, what is morality? That's a huge, serious question. I'm sitting in the board of a bank, and there's a Dutch guy there who's one of the nicest persons I've ever met. We're very warm and close. But he thinks there's no moral context. But he's very nice. And I love him. So I mean, in other words, you cannot, I mean, this question of morality, who's moral, but in the end, you know what will happen? Even if you have a right notion of morality, if there's such a thing, right? Still to be debated. What will end up is that whoever has the manner and the power, their vision and worldview will be the de facto world we're living in. Okay, so I think we just have to get that really straight and clear. We will be talking here, very nice, got nice ideas. In the end, the billions of dollars that are being poured to artificial intelligence will define what it will be. Because those billions of dollars are being formed under a specific expectation. Okay, because, for example, data mining is very lucrative. And that's what has tempted, Google, Microsoft, Apple to start stealing your data. I mean, not really stealing, because they'll say you signed the agreement which you never read. Because the agreement is 32 pages in small fonts, and who would like to read that? Right? But in the end, they have now ownership and access to most of your data. Okay? I mean, you just have to be very clear with these technologies. What kind of intention is there, right? Yeah, what kind of intention is working there? So that's how you would understand what is moral, right? What is the worldview that is going to dominate the technological landscape? And this is why, for me, the social question is a very large component, because currently the way the world is structured, it will ensure that these decisions are going to be made by a few people who have the money and the power and the connections to make it happen. Okay, and the belief system, of course, right? That works always together. So that's why one of my dreams is still there. There's increasing number of people that are also into it, is to convene a global conference where such fundamental questions are going to be asked. But the point is not for debate. The point is you invite somebody like Ray Kurzweil there, invite somebody like Elon Musk there. I mean, different sides of the whole debate, just for people to listen. Which makes most sense, right? Because as far as morality is concerned, you cannot tell people you're immoral, right? That's what I learned debating with Monsanto, for example, which I did, right? And some of the top scientists that were pushing the genetic engineering when I was in Washington, D.C. But the concept of morality is very diverse. And that ultimately, in the end, is a question of power. Who has the power to make what worldview the dominant worldview? That's why I think, and this is why I find this very healthy, AI is not a conversation from among AI experts. They have to be there. The AI experts have to be there. But it has to be a conversation with the world. There has to be a global conversation where the future of humanity is going to go. If we all believe in democracy or its illusion, because it's becoming illusory in many democratic countries, including the Philippines. There's the semblance of democracy, but then in the end, political leaders don't really listen. They just do their own thing, and most of the time they're influenced by power and money, right? There has to be a global conversation. Okay, there is a kind of model for this that we already did. Shockingly, I'm that old, 22 years ago, in Malaysia on the whole question of genetic engineering. We had a kind of model there. But it's not going to be, it was a different model, but we got in the most advanced thinkers and doers and scientists of molecular biology and genetic engineering in the same room as citizens who were active in civil society. It was a fascinating conversation because in the end, that shaped the whole direction of biotechnology in the world. Small conversation group like that, where the diversity influenced the direction. And by the way, as controversial as it is, as we shall see tonight, there is a consensus point in the artificial intelligence community, no matter what your morals are. Because in the end, it's going to be all about survival. I don't think there's any worldview here that will say, hey, I want to be extinct, right? None. So in the end, it's all about survival. And so now this interesting development where people from different sides of the AI have come together to make a declaration. I'll touch on that tonight. But during these days, I'm going to slowly bring in some of these questions so you know where you're going. So it's very important. Your questions are very important because those are the perspectives that you bring. And then we will try to deal with them in terms of, at least from my perspective, what are the other scientific developments saying about those questions? Because it doesn't mean to say if you're an AI expert, you're an expert on astrophysics, right? And vice versa. Because as we know, scientific development is compartmentalized, right? Hardly speaking to each other, but when they do, it's very powerful. And I think the world has a topic for a fantastic conversation because AI, if you're going to do it properly and it's for the benefit of humanity, we will have to break down the barriers of these scientific departments and all bring it into a holistic, larger picture of humanity. So that's where we're going the next few days. And I'm really excited to hear your questions and perspectives because that will help to inform some of these details. So the next several days we'll be having conversations about fundamental assumptions of human existence. Because AI is forcing that kind of conversation. If we don't deal at that level, we cannot have moral technology. However you understand it, there are many different understandings of moral technology, which we will also tackle. What is the worldview? What are the values? What are the goals? And in the end, it's going to become a social issue. What will it matter if I have the correct view and I'm the only one, right? It's going to move in the view where it's heading anyway, right? So we have to think of this as a kind of going deeper into the topic from perspectives that are not usually found in the internet. Because I've been looking for them. And now I have to supply them. You know what I'm saying? They're just missing there. And then on top of that, if we do come up with a certain kind of thing, how will that now affect society at large, at least globally? This is a global discussion topic. And I can tell you, and to end the talk, coming from the Philippines, on the receiving end of technology, superior technology, we lost our freedom. We were colonized by basically superior technology. I mean, how could you win? You're very brave, courageous, but you're fighting with knives. And the Americans had Gatling guns and all kinds of advanced technology, including battleships that were, you know what I'm saying? We're sensitive towards what ends technologies are going to be released into the world, because there are so many good technologies, and then there's a few ones that are, you know, you have to put your attention to. Just in our case, where we, in a sense, regulated nuclear power and genetic engineering. But what is how will it look like with artificial intelligence? The answer can only be collective wisdom of humanity. But if that conversation is taking place in an elite group with very few people, lack of diversity, humanity is basically out of that conversation. I think it's an important, and I'm glad this is a step for me, step in the right direction. And that more or less give us the kind of questions we'll be dealing with. Yeah, thank you for your time. Yeah. Yeah.